Hello guys, welcome back to Math Zone African Motives. We are still working on our equations. So these are actually quadratic equations that we're gonna be focusing on, whereby you are given, just take a closer look of a quadratic equation. Remember, we talked about quadratic expressions before when we were talking about the trinomials. So we can have a trinomial maybe of x squared plus 5x plus 6 like this equal to 0 like that. Whenever we are now equating this trinomial to a certain value, the moment we say is equal to, we are now talking about a quadratic equation. All right, so what happens is that the highest, because what is controlling is the highest exponent, which is 2. That is why we are saying it's a quadratic, okay? A linear equation is the one that I talked about, whereby we are given something like 5x is equal to 5x plus 6 is equal to 6. The highest exponent of x is 1. That one, it's a linear. So we're talking about a linear equation. So the highest exponent that we are talking about is a 1. The highest exponent, if it is a 2 on an equation, it means we are having a quadratic equation. So what happens on a linear, we are going to have like the exponent is 1. So we are going to have one solution. So there we have got one solution. On a quadratic, the highest exponent is 2. So we're going to have two solutions. On our final answer, we are going to have what? Two solutions, two roots, two values of x. The solutions are the values of x that we are talking about. So when you're talking about a quadratic equation, the one that we are saying the highest exponent in this case is 2, we are going to have two solutions. All right. So what is important is that we are going to be applying the factorization method. But for the first type of equations that we see, they have already factorized these equations for us. So I want you to understand, how do you solve such type of equations when they have already factorized? Like, as you can see, there are already two brackets. We are supposed to be applying factorization as usual, but I want you to see this part here. All right, like I said, this is a quadratic equation. We're going to have two solutions. So the first equation that you're given, number one, we are given to solve the following. To solve is to find the value of the unknown, that is to find the value of x. Now, or whatever unknown that you're given there. If it is y, you have to find the value of y. If it is m, you have to find the value of m. Okay, so we have got the first part that two brackets are equal to 0. Already it's factorized. Remember, when there are two brackets like this, it means this has been factorized. All right. So the question is that you're asking yourself, how can I obtain a 0 from the two products? It follows that the product of two numbers to be equal to 0, it's either one of these numbers must be equal to 0. It's either A must be equal to 0, all right? Or B must be equal to 0. One of these two terms, as long as it's a product that you are dealing with, that you are working with, it's either one of these two must be equal to 0. So in this case, if we are to refer that, we can refer, because this is a product, the bracket means that you're multiplying. So there's a product of two terms. This represents our A, and this part represents our B. So you see, we have the same concept, but they are brackets now. So we simply have the same concept that we are multiplying and we are getting a 0. So it means one of these must be equal to 0. So it means either x minus 3 must be equal to 0, or we are going to have the x plus 6 being equal to what? Being equal to 0. One of these two brackets, just like A to be equal to 0 or B equal to 0. So there from this stage, you can solve. Now you are left with a linear equations. Remember, a linear, we can transpose 3 to a negative 3 to the other side, it becomes a positive. So it was negative 3 to the other side of the equation, it becomes a positive. So x is going to be 0 plus 3, which is a 3. Remember that 0 plus any number, if you add a 0 to any number, that number remains as it is, right? So that is the condition. Or we can transpose the 6 to the other side, it becomes what? A negative 6. So if we transpose 6 to this side, it becomes a negative 6. So that means our x is going to be, it was supposed to be written as 0 minus 6. That's 0 minus 6 is going to give us what? A negative 6. All right, so this is going to give us a negative 6 at the end. So x there is going to be a negative 6. So as we can see, we are obtaining two solutions. Just like I said, this is to show that you're dealing with a quadratic equation as long as you're given two brackets. Okay, so let's consider the second question. X plus 4 into x minus 8 is just one and the same situation that we have there. We are given x plus 4 into the bracket of x minus 8 being equal to 0. So like I said, one of these brackets must be equal to 0. So it's either the bracket of x plus 4 must be equal to 0 or the bracket of x minus 8 must be equal to 0. So if we transpose 4 to this side, it becomes a negative. So x is going to be negative 4, or x is going to be, if we transpose negative 8 to this side, it's going to be a positive 8. That's 0 plus 8, which is going to give us what? A positive 8. So that is how we can have the values of x. So it is the same situation that we have on number 3, as long as they have factorized this for us. This has been factorized to have a bracket x times, we are multiplying, there are two terms, this x multiplying to this. As long you are multiplying, we are back to a times a b equal to 0. A times, as long we are multiplying. So that means x must be equal to 0. It's either x must be equal to a 0 or the bracket of x plus 3 must be equal to 0. So from this side, we're going to transpose 3 to that side. It becomes what? It becomes a negative. So therefore, x can be equal to 0 or x can be equal to a negative 3. These are the values of x, which satisfies this equation. So this goes up to any type of equation that you're given, whether you're given this type of an equation, just like number 4. Right, let's just see number 4, what we are given, so that we can quickly try another part. This one is just a repetition. So number 4 is to have the same thing, two brackets again, equal to 0. It means one of these brackets must be equal to 0. So we're given the bracket of 2x minus 5 into the bracket of 3x plus 1. So this is into the bracket of 3x plus 1 is equal to 0. So what does that part mean? It means one of these two brackets must be equal to 0, because we are still back to the 0 concept. The 0 concept, we are multiplying two terms, two brackets to give us a 0. So it means one of the brackets must be equal to 0. So it means either 2x minus 5 must be equal to 0, or we are going to have the bracket of 3x plus 1 equal to 0. So here we are now solving a normal linear equation that we are used to where we are supposed to transpose the negative 5 to the other side. It becomes a positive 5. So that means 2x is going to be equal to 0 plus 5. That's a 0 plus 5, which gives us a positive 5. On the other hand, you do the same thing. If you transpose the negative, the positive 1 to the other side, it becomes a negative. So that means 3x is going to be equivalent to a negative 1. That's 0 minus 1. So this is 2x, not x. So how do I obtain x? I have to divide by 2, because we are multiplying. So I have to divide by 2. When I divide by 2, I cancel this. So that's x is going to be equal to 5 over 2. Or if I divide here, because I've got 3x, I'm going to divide by 3 both sides. So that means x is going to be equivalent to negative 1 over 3. So these are the possible values of x that we can obtain from this equation. But I want you to see that it is actually a total different thing that we are having on question number 5. On question number 5, we are given x plus 4 into the bracket of x minus 8, which is equal to 0. This one is not going to work if we say x is equal to 0. No. because there is a sign that we are given, a sign that is affecting, which is that's the positive. That means here we are adding. So it's not a product. We are not applying the zero product. No, no. What are we going to do? The only option for this was to just expand the brackets by 4, then you can collect the like terms, because here there is an addition that we are having. Okay, sorry for that. I don't know what's happening with this software, guys. Here, there is an addition that is happening. So that means we're going to expand the brackets by 4. So that's x. 4 is going to multiply everything inside the bracket. 4 times x, that is going to give us 4x. 4 times negative 8, which is going to give us negative 32, and this is equal to 0. That is what we have. There's nothing that you're going to do. Just multiply your numbers. You've got your calculator to prove your multiplications whenever you want to multiply. 4 and 1, I think, is direct. 4 and negative 8, you can just multiply 4 times, and negative 8 like this. This is going to be negative 32. Then what are we going to do? We just add. Here we're going to add. This is a linear. We do not have a quadratic. This is just a linear equation. So it's 1x plus 4x, which is going to give us a 5x minus 32 is equal to 0. Remember our linear equation concept, you have to transpose the negative 32 to the other side because it does not have x. So that means it is going to be a positive. It was negative on the other side. It is going to be positive. 0 plus 32. Then we divide by 5 both sides. So this gives us the value of x, which is going to give us 32 over 5. So that's the value of x that you're going to obtain. Or you can just divide on our calculator 32 divided by 5, which is going to give us something like 6,4. Or you can write as a mixed fraction 6 and 2 over 5. This is one and the same way that you can have your final answers. So that's how tempting it can be, where you are not given exactly the quadratic that you're used to. There's a linear equation, not a quadratic. So take note, you are adding on this part. If it was a multiplication, not an addition, right? Like this part on question number, it's a multiplication, and there's no need for me to multiply the brackets. I do not need to multiply this. The moment that is a multiplication on question number 6, 3x into the bracket of 2x plus 5 is equal to, as long here it's a multiplication. As long I'm working with the multiplication, that means I have to equate one of these two terms to 0 because it is equal to 0. So it means it's either the bracket or this 3x must be equal to 0. So I'm going to have the 3x, all right? Let us have this. The 3x to be equal to 0, or the bracket of 2x plus 5 also to be equal to what? Also to be equal to 0. So on the first part, there's nothing here. I'm just multiplying, so I'm just going to divide to remove the 3. So therefore, our x is going to be equal to 0. Remember, 0 divided by a number, that's a 0. Or you can just do that on your calculator to confirm. This is a 0 divided by 3, 0 over 3, which is what? Which is going to give us a 0. All right, on the other hand, we're going to transpose the 5 to the other hand of the equation, the right-hand side, and this is going to be a negative 5. If you transpose 5 to that side, it is going to be a negative 5. So that means we're going to have 2x is equal to negative 5. Divide by 2, both sides, we obtain the value of x. And our x there is going to be negative 5 over 2. So there we've got two possible solutions, x being a 0 and the x being a negative 5 over 2. That's it. That's how we can solve these equations. All right. So as if it's not enough, there can be questions that you can actually be factorizing, because you'll be wondering to say, so where is the part of the factorization? Wait, why are you talking about the factorization? Okay. Consider the first equation that we have on number B. Solve the equations. Number B, we are given first question. Now, I'm not going to answer everything. I'm just going to take 1 or 2 questions, because if I actually answered like most of the questions, so just going to take 1 or 2 questions that we need to actually do our solving by factorization. All right. This question you're given x squared is equal to 9. There are 2 ways that you can actually answer this question. Number 1, x squared is equal to 9. Right. It's either I'm just going to ask myself, is that I need x here. I need to have x. And there is a square. The square means that it can be removed by introducing the square root. Remember, opposite of the square, we talked about this, that as the square root, where I have the square root of x. To remove the square root of x, I have to raise this to the exponent of 2 to get x. So if I'm given x squared, to remove these two here, I can just introduce the square root. The moment I introduce the square root, remember inside the square root there's a 2, so 2 divided by 2, that's a 1. So this will give us x. So whenever I'm given a square, I have to oppose one of the two. Is either I'm given a square or a square root. Here I've got a square, so I'm going to introduce the square root both sides. I'm just going to have the square root here, square root here. So what does it mean? The square root of x squared, we are neutralizing the square, we are removing the square, so you're going to remain with x, which is the square root of 9. Knowing that it's the square root of a number, the square root of any number is plus or minus. So that will be plus or minus 3. All right. But as we are on the factorization, let's say we wanted to do this on our factorization. What is it that we could have done? All right. The x squared is equal to 9 that we see here. If we were to transpose the 9 to the other side of the equation, this was going to give us x squared minus 9 is equal to 0. And by doing so, we can see that on the left-hand side is not just a normal expression. It's a very, very special type of an expression that we have there. And what type of expression is that? That's the difference of two squares. You can see that the x squared is a perfect square, this 9 is a perfect square. So you're supposed to have two brackets for our difference of two squares, x here, the square root of x squared. The square root of 9, which is 3. So one of the brackets, remember, it is supposed to subtract, the other one, it adds. And this gives us a 0. So we're now back to the 0 concept because there are two brackets multiplying each other equal to 0. And I said, when it is like this, it means one of these must be equal to 0. So if you are to check, x is going to be equal to, if you transpose negative 3 goes the other side there, it becomes positive 3. Or x is going to be equal, take the positive 3, the other hand there, it is going to be what? A negative 3. So this is the plus or minus 3 that we see here. The plus or the minus 3, there are two possible values. The plus or minus means there are two solutions, one being a positive, other one being a negative. So that is how we could have answered this question. So it follows on all these typical questions of questions that we have. We are just going to apply the same thing, just factorize wherever it is possible. But sometimes it's not like that where difference of two squares is applicable. Sometimes it's not even applicable, like on question number 4. We are given the x squared is equal to 9x. There is no way I can even apply the difference of two squares. This is 9x, not 9x. So there's nothing that we cannot do. So the only way was to take this 9x to the other side, so that we're going to have x squared minus 9x is equal to 0. Now we can properly do our factorization. Remember this, we are used to this part here. We are used to factorize this. So on this part, we are going to factorize. And how do we factorize this? We just have to factor out the highest common factor between x squared and x, which is x. That's going to be x squared divided by x. So if we divide x squared to x, this will be x. Minus 9x divided by x, this will be a negative 9. That's equal to 0. Make sure that you watch the video on factorization so that you'll be able to understand this part, but I talked about this. All right, so that divide the first term, divide it to x, which is going to be x squared divided by x, minus 9x divided by x and x cancels, you get a negative 9. So as you can see, we're back to the product of two terms, and it is equal to 0. So it means one of these must be equal to 0. So it means it's either x is supposed to be equal to 0 or the bracket of x minus 9 must be equal to 0. So already here I've got a solution that x is equal to 0. What about from x minus 9? If I transpose the negative 9 that side, it means x is going to be what? A positive 9. So these are the two solutions that we have that satisfies the value of x, that we can substitute here and get the same answer that we have. Okay, so that is how you play around with these typical equations. Then some of the questions, they do need you again to apply the longer way of your factorization, just like question number 9, which is same as question number 10. So I'm just going to explain question number 10, but it's the same thing that you could have done on question number 9. What you could have done on question number 9 was to rearrange the 8 to this side. It becomes a negative, so this will be something like x squared minus 2x minus 8 is equal to 0. You factorize, which is the same thing like what you have on number 10. But on number 10, take note, there's a bracket there. All right, so let's concentrate on number 10, because I think that is where we've got something that is important there. So we've got an x, but you can try number 9. If you have a challenge on that one, let me know so that we can redo that question together. So this is x on number 10 into x minus 5 plus 6 is equal to 0. Remember, we had this type of a question before, which was similar to this, if you still remember, something that we had on number 5 here. And I said, because of this addition, we cannot use the 0 concept to say one of these is equal to 0, because you are adding. So that part does not play a role whenever you're adding or subtracting. This is the same thing that is happening because of this plus 6 that we have. So whenever you are back to you have a question like this, you must go back to the normal simplification, expand your brackets, then redo the factorization. So you're supposed to re-expand and do the factorization. X and x, that will be x squared, x and minus 5. This gives us minus 5x. Distribute everything by x, all right? Plus 6 is equal to 0. So as we have expanded, we can see that, okay, now we can properly see our quadratic expression, which is the trinomial that we are used to. And in this case, the coefficient of a squared, the coefficient of x squared, which is a in this case, this one is 1. So I told you guys, whenever it is like this, do not worry, just put your two brackets, equate to 0 like this, then this is going to be x, this is going to be x. You're factorizing this, you are factorizing this part. So to factorize this part, you're going to have x and x. Okay, then consider the factors that are products of 6. Okay, make sure we understand this, guys. We talked about this on a separate class on factorization of these trinomials. So make sure that you watch the video, guys. But here you need the products, which are the factors of positive 6x. What are the products that we're going to consider in this case, which are the factors, two factors that you consider in this case, two factors of what? 6. But these factors of 6, they should give us the negative 5. So we need two numbers. These two numbers, when you multiply them, they must give you a 6. But if you add, they must give you a negative 5. So consider just a trial and error. This is 6 and 1. But to get a positive negative 5, it's impossible. Even if we put a negative and a negative here, that will be something like negative 7. But I do not like quit, because this is a trial and error. Try 3 and 2. There's a possibility of getting a 5 and negative 5. Yes, if you multiply 3 and 2, we get a positive 6. But if we add 3 plus 2, we get a positive 5, not a negative 5. So what do? We are supposed to get a positive 6. So this must be negative, and this also must be negative. Negative times a negative, it gives us a positive. If we add negative 3 and negative 2, we get a negative 5. Negative 3 plus negative 2, we get a negative 5. Okay, this is what I'm trying to say. Negative 3 plus a negative 2. Just open a bracket and write negative 2 like this. This gives us a negative 5. But if I multiply these two terms, negative 3 and a negative 2, if I multiply, I get a positive 6. That is the most important case. But if I add, I get the negative 5, which is the number that I have in the middle term, which is the coefficient of x. So these are the two terms that I do need in these brackets. As they are, we just take this. Remember, guys, your factorization, like I said, watch the video on factorization of this so that you understand this factorization. But this is what you're supposed to do. Then one of these brackets, we are now back to the equation. We are no longer to say we are factorizing. No, this is now back to your equation. what is it that you can do to find x? One of these brackets must be equal to 0 because it is equal to 0. So it means x must be equal to what? If x minus 3 is equal to 0, transpose negative 3 to the other side, it becomes what? A positive 3. Or x is equal to transpose negative 2 to the other side, it becomes a positive 2. So these are the two possible values of x that we're supposed to get, x being a positive 3 and x being a positive 2. So you are supposed to have this in a normal way of your factorization that you are used to. So I want you to try as much questions as you can in your simplification so that you'll be able to understand how these questions are given, where you need to expand the brackets, do expand the brackets, where you need to simplify after that, do simplify after that. But these are the typical questions that we are given. So I'm not going to work out all of the questions. Like I said, I want to leave this platform in your hands to try as much questions as you can. Where you've got a challenge on answering of these questions, let me know. But what you need, make sure that you expand the brackets first. Wherever there are brackets, expand the brackets, collect the like terms, and write. In fact, do not just collect the like terms. This is a quadratic equation. So make sure that you write your equations in the format ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. This is the format that you are supposed to have before you do any of the factorization, all right? Once you have written your equation in this format, then you can do factorize, equate the brackets, equate each of the bracket to 0, because already after you factorize, because here it simply shows that this is being equal to what? This is being equal to 0. So once you factorize this part, it means you're going to have two brackets that are equal to 0. One of those brackets must be equal to 0. From the concept a times b to be equal to 0, it means either a must be equal to 0 or b must be equal to 0. That is the only way for us to get a 0. One of these two numbers, one of these two terms must be what? Must be a 0. So like I said, I want you to try as much questions as you can. Try to work out these questions. Let me know if there are any questions that are challenging on these questions that are remaining so that we can work on them. But what we're going to do is to work with question papers now as a revision on what we have done so that you'll be able to see how do they ask these questions.